people here, the Yurok people. And I got this from a woman who published a book back in 1916, and her English name was Lucy Thompson. The book she wrote was called To the American Indian. Again, it's from 1916. You can actually access it on Google Books. So anybody who wants to see the original version before it was reprinted and kind of added to by a lot of native scholars, go ahead and get it on Google. Otherwise, buy the book too, because it's really a very, very in-depth analysis. And she's talking about an ancient society that she was a member of that kept a history of America and the mysteries associated with this history. I was just astonished because her group was called the American Mystery Society in English, but they had been keeping this for thousands of years in a formal sense. They had meetings and so forth. And she and her father were the last two members, and she kind of dedicated all of her knowledge to this book. So it is definitely something that you should look at out there in the audience, should you have an interest in this kind of thing. And if I have permission, Kirsten, I'd like to just quote her a little bit.
That would be great.
Okay. She says, when the Indians first made their appearance on the Klamath River, which is in the northwest, it was already inhabited by a white race of people. Now, these aren't white people nowadays. These were people that had light skin that is very similar to the light-skinned natives that went from coast to coast. Every major tribe, especially in the northwest, in the middle, and some in the northeast, had light skin. Vine Deloria told that to me at one time. So I'm going to repeat this. When the Indians first made their appearance on the Klamath River, it was already inhabited by a white race of people known among us as the Wagas. These white people were found to inhabit the whole continent. Now, this is when the Indians first came, and Paleo-Indian sources, this is from archaeology, say that First Nations people arrived as early as 17,000 years ago. So using that as a marker, we're going to say that Lucy Thompson's people came very early, 17,000 years ago. And that was still during the Pleistocene period. The Holocene, when populations began to explode, was around 12,000 years ago. So these white people were found to inhabit the whole continent and were a highly moral and civilized race. They heartily welcomed the Indians to their country and taught us all their arts and sciences. The Indians recognized the rights of these ancient people as the first possessors of the soil and had no difficulties, and no difficulties ever arose between the two people. And we're talking coast to coast. Their hospitality was exceedingly generous in the welfare of our people, and all prospered in peace and happiness in the pursuit of human existence. After a time, there were intermarriages between the two races, but these were never promiscuous. For a vast period of time, the two races dwelt together in peace and honored homes. Wars and I get emotional just reading about that. Wars were unknown, and quarrels were unknown. In this golden age of happiness, no depredations were ever committed upon the property of their people, as the white people ruled with beacon light of kindness, and our people still worship the hallowed places where they trod. Their morals were far superior to the white people of today. Their ideals were high and inspired our people with greatness. Now, I just want to interject here that there was a common belief that went all through North America and into Central America, which we know about first contact, stories, that Native people were expecting the return of a white race who were their friends. And that when they returned, the Indians and these white people would again restore a golden age to North America. And this, again, permeated even into Central America, which we hear from the Maya and their accounts of the white people returning. They thought they were gods. And also into South America. This belief held true. But it wasn't until after the white people came, from Europe for a few decades, that the Indians were sorely disappointed and began to fight them and to really disavow any belief that they were this ancient predicted white race that would come back. That always puzzled me, Why did they want to honor white people so much? Because we were not good. We were bad people. There's a few white people that were good, but they weren't enough to stem the tide of ignorance. And so we hear from Lucy Thompson that indeed there was a race. But they didn't look like the white race today either. They were more of a noble bearing. And according to what I heard from Vine Deloria Jr., who got his information from Warner Mullet, who was an anthropologist some time back, they were very much related to the Cro-Magnon type of people. Now, Cro-Magnon was a robust people. They oftentimes were over 6 feet, and there were some that were considerably taller than that. And they had strong jaw, the upright forehead, large orbits, very much like, but not quite as robust and good-looking as our Adena people, from Ohio, who spread out into the Great South and into the middle. They were among the Sioux, one of the base races that founded the Sioux populations, and also deep into the upper Northeast. And they consisted of a race of people that were so powerful and strong, these Adena, that they were oftentimes the head of their societies. And they oftentimes controlled the economies when they grouped together in larger numbers. So the Susquehanna people were apparently related to these earlier Adena people. And also, when you get into the Ozark Plateau, you have those founding people who controlled the economy and were even known to the early American government. Jeffersonian people knew about them. They were called the Osage, and they still boast members who are 6'10" and 7 feet among some of their people, but they keep it a low profile for the most part. Mm-hmm. And into the Deep South, you still have very tall tribal members, especially among the so-called 5 civilized races. Mm-hmm. So these were all these races could trace their origins back to Ohio and the Adena people. And the Adena people themselves apparently were part of that mixed race that was started by the earlier native inhabitants and these pre-inhabitants that were here in the Pleistocene called the Wagas. So they spawned, if I could use that term, but they created this beautiful hybrid race that began after the Wagas disappeared. And I'm getting to that part. They spawned this beautiful kind of hybrid race that was in charge of Turtle Island, and they were really the original founders of the new Turtle Island, which is the one that we all remember, that eventually spread from the Northeast Canada and United States region across the entire North American continent, including all of Canada. That was called Turtle Island. But before that, it was like a beautiful country that was contained in the like of an ellipse, of an elliptical shape. It went from the Gulf of Mexico way up into Canada, around the Hudson Bay. It had its flanks in the region of the Lakota, Dakota people, and to the eastern seaboard of the current eastern North America. And this country at its height was called Manitoba, but when it began, it was called Turtle Island. And the reason is because it was found on Mackinac Island, which is at the top of Michigan. And Mackinac is still revered as a holy place by the native tribes, especially Canadian First Nations people.
Ross, I'm going to have to interrupt here. We have a couple minutes left, so just to let you know, time flies, right?
Yeah. Well, I apologize, but one last thing, I appreciate the time heads up. When these people had lived together for many thousands of years, Lucy Thompson tells us that suddenly, in one season, all these people were contacted by some power to the north, the Great Spirit, which I think was a very well-behaved magnetic field, because somebody was controlling it better at the north. The Great Spirit ordered them all back home. And to their tearful regrets, the Wagas, these Alihana people, I call them the Alihana, they all said goodbye, they did their farewells, and they made an about face to the north, and they walked away. Mm-hmm. And Vine Deloria commented on that. He said, nobody really knows where they went, although some speculate they went to the north and just disappeared. And then some speculate some of them went over to Europe and fought some great war for one of their spiritual leaders. But that's it in a nutshell. And then after that, only their children were left, the hybrid race.
Wow.
Who became the Adena.
Yes, I think we're going to have to leave it right there because it makes room for another. We'll remember this. I'll listen to this interview again, and we'll do another one to catch up on that. Where did they go? Because that seems to be in the vernacular of today's so-called new discoveries of history, that the Vikings were here and all that. Yet what is going on, because I think you alluded to it earlier, is that the Indians found light-skinned people there. They came there. But where did the Indians, the native people, come from? Is that still supporting the theory of Bering Strait or not?
No, she says that their people came from Cheek-Cheek-Out. Their people came down from the holy north.
That's right. And that's what we'll leave it at, and we'll have to go into that next time. Next time we'll really talk about this. That's a good one to end on. But, it's always interesting because, I'll allow you to talk because I want to find out something. And your work with Vine and Doug George and Jake Swamp and has come to this. And, over the years, it's been about 15, 20 years now we've been doing this time to time and catching up. So I'm really interested. So, yes, Ross, it's always an honor to have you here and to pique our interest in about what's really here before 1492. So
Right. Okay, Gilson, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Yes, for sure, Ross. Thanks, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. This is Tilkson with First Voices Radio. We'll be right back with our next guest. Their next guest. Sorry, and make sure that you stay tuned to this very special guest we have on, just as the first guest, Ross Hamilton, Dr. Paulette Steeves, and we'll be right back. Thank you.